going to resume with types of lipids or types of fats. And I'll just breeze over a couple of these. We spend more time on like the dietary fats, like saturated, unsaturated, and trans. But these are going to come into play when we talk about cells and tissues of the body and structures of the body. These are phospholipids. These really crazy looking sort of structure. It's got a phosphate group, which is a phosphorus with oxygens around it. It's got this charged choline group up here that has nitrogen. So it has charge. Notice there's a little plus charge. It's got charge here negative on the oxygen. And then it's got this 3-carbon, CH2, CH, CH2. And then it's attached to these long hydrocarbon chains. There's 2 of them. What can you say right away? You see these long hydrocarbon chains. Oh, look, there's a double bond right there in one of them. See that? There's a double bond there. This one has no double bond. What are those 2 things?
Saturated and unsaturated fat.
Yes, these are fatty acids. This one is a saturated fatty acid. This is an unsaturated fatty acid. So this is a typical construction of what a phospholipid looks like. It's got a phospho group that's charged. Okay, it's got oxygen, it's got phosphate. Is this going to like water or not like water? It's going to like water. It's water loving. It's polar. This part is polar. It's charged. Okay, these are fats. Are these going to like water or not like water? Not like water. These are non-polar. Polar, non-polar. Okay? This is, does anybody know what this makes up? What this type of fat category makes up? What? You know where you find these in the body? Where would you find these? They're all over your entire body. Everywhere. Cells, every single cell of your body. Every single one of the 37, 40 trillion cells of your body are made up of phospholipids. This is the wrapping or the membrane that goes around every single cell, okay? And your cells have this little lipid protective barrier to help keep them protected from the outside environment, aka inside your body or outside your body, okay? So phospholipids have really interesting structure in that they've got that same glycerol. Remember how we make triglycerides? You've got the 3-carbon glycerol and then the fatty acids, the 3 fatty acids that come off of it. In this case, we've got the glycerol, the 3-carbon little chain, and then 2 fatty acids that come off of it. We also have the polar characteristics of it, the phosphate and the choline group. We call this molecule amphipathic. So you've learned already hydrophilic and hydrophobic, remember? This is amphipathic. This means, what does amphi mean? Do you know what amphi means? Amphi means both. Like amphibians, like a frog, can go in the water and on land. Amphi in Latin means both. Amphipathic, it likes both. It likes polar water situations and it likes fat lipid situations. So this is a beautiful setup for your cells, and I'm going to draw real quick and dirty. This is how I draw the phospholipid. Okay? Bunch of them. Like this. They all line up together. Polar, this has got charge to it. Okay? This doesn't, it's the fat part. If these line up and they make a bilayer, they find each other and they kind of associate, like goes with like. They link up. These guys go this way. These guys go that way. And voila. What do I have with this setup right here? This is called a lipid. Oh, you can't see this one very good, can you?
Are the ones on the bottom positive too?
These are exactly the same thing. Yep, these are the same molecule. I'm drawing this phospholipid 8 times. It's arranging in space. They find each other, they link up, and they assemble. Polar goes to the outside towards the water because the watery environment is all surrounding out here. We're aqueous, we're like 70% water, something around there. This is lipid, called a lipid bilayer. This is what makes up the membrane, the plasma membrane of every single one of your cells. This makes up the plasma membrane. And this is what allows your cells to keep certain things out and to let certain things in. And actually, inserted in many different places, we have channels, that one's gone, that one, I can't believe both my grades are gone. We have different proteins and things that are inserted into the membrane, where they have pores, and they're big fat proteins going all the way through. That's what allows key things like ions, things that are charged like calcium or sodium, all these ions and things we talked about, the really important ones, potassium one. That allows these materials to come in and out of the cell as needed. But this lipid barrier, plasma lipid barrier, provides this sort of selective membrane where only certain things can come in and out. So essentially, this helps protect your entire body, helps protect every single cell of your body, and keep this sort of protective layer around the cell. And where we find it is, here we have little cells, you have a nucleus where all the DNA is in the nucleus, and you have this lipid bilayer that goes all the way around. It's got proteins and receptors. It's got receptors coming off of it that respond to hormones and different molecules. It's got ion channels that allow ions as needed to go back and forth. But for the most part, this membrane is a permeable, selectively permeable membrane that helps to protect and create a barrier for all of your cells. We also find it in different structures in the cells. We have different organelles that have membranes sort of encasing around them. So this is really important. This is an important fat or lipid for your body, for your normal physiology and function, because it encompasses all of the cells of your body. It's got a head and a tail. So a lot of people, I'll just call this like, this is the polar head, this is the non-polar tail. And these will actually link up or line up in this way. Interesting thing too, these phospholipids, we have other molecules that are like phospholipids or similar in this category, and they're things like shampoos and conditioners and detergents and laundry soap. All those things actually have this amphipathic nature where they have a head and a fatty tail. And what that allows to do is the polar end can kind of link up or associate with the water, the outside water, and the dirt and the oil and the debris gets collected by the fatty actual tails. And that is something that's interesting in this. I didn't draw it in here, but if I write it, it would link up like a shampoo, for example, or a soap, like when you wash your hands, that's what happens. It actually makes these little structures, the detergents, the soaps, make these little structures where the polar head is facing out, and all the little fatty acid hydrophobic tails are facing the inside. Okay? We call this a micelle. This is the premise of how like good soaps, detergents, conditioners, shampoos, all that stuff, that's exactly how they work. And what ends up getting trapped in there is the oil and the dirt. Yes? So really it's a really interesting way that these phospholipids, because they're amphipathic like that, oh, you can't even see where I'm drawing right now. You can't see on the video, sorry about that. But okay, micelles. So they basically associate with water and associate with the dirt and oil, and that's how they pull off a lot of the dirt that's on your hands, your hair, all of that. So which end likes water?
The polar side.
The polar side. Okay, what we call the polar side?
The head.
The head, okay, it has a phosphate group, and there's charged. You can say it's got a phosphate, it's got some other stuff, it's charged, okay, it likes water. What's the end that does not like water? The tail. What's the tail made of? Lipids, specifically? Two fatty acids, okay? It's lipid, yes, but these are two specific fatty acids, a saturated and an unsaturated fatty acid, typically, that make up our phospholipid bilayer. All right, so where do you find them now? Your cells. Lining the membrane of all of your cells, and lining the membranes of some of the little organs or organelles inside of your cells. We're going to look at what's in the contents of a cell coming up after metabolism. Okay, yikes, where'd it go? There it is. Plasma membrane. So here's an example of a characteristic cell. It's got the nucleus, it's got the DNA all contained within it, all in here. It's got these special organelles, mitochondria that make energy, ATP. We're going to look at these very soon. Plasma membrane is this nice lipid bilayer made of phospholipids. Phosphate group head, fatty acid tails, helps to make this nice envelope that's selectively permeable. You don't want everything just blasting and getting into your cells. You don't want every single molecule, every single toxin, every ion, every sugar. You don't want that. You want it to come in and out as needed, right? So you can maintain homeostasis at the level of the cell, okay? So it makes up the plasma membrane and lining the membranes of some of these other organelles within your cells. All right, cholesterol and lipoproteins. We're getting on. This is another category of lipid or fat, cholesterol and lipoproteins. Cholesterol in the blood is not really cholesterol alone. So cholesterol has a specific little ring structure. We're going to look at it. But when we refer to, when you say high cholesterol levels or low cholesterol levels, we're not referring to just cholesterol molecule by itself. These are actually called lipoproteins, types of proteins. They're actually called fat proteins because they're like amalgamations of fat along with protein, okay? Lipoprotein, what does that sound like, lipo? Fat, lipid, right? So this is lipid protein. These are lipid what?
It sounded like liposuction.
It sounded like liposuction, yes. Actually, when I said it, that's exactly what I think of. I always think of lipoproteins, liposuction. No, lipoproteins refers to lipid and protein together. So it's this combination, these big molecules, macromolecules, that are in the lipid category, but they're actually made of lipid and protein together. Lipoproteins carry fat and cholesterol to and from the tissues of the body and the linings of the arteries. So they travel throughout the arteries in the circulation, and they transport fat and cholesterol to and from the cells and tissues of the body as needed. Okay, so they're like fat carriers, fat transporters. Okay, and they do transport cholesterol itself, the actual molecule of cholesterol that we're going to look at in a second. Okay, so they transport them throughout the blood. Now, in lab, we're actually doing this week, we're going to start the nutrition metabolism section and get an introduction to that, where we're going to start the nutrition and activity logs. That's mostly out of lab, though. That's like the lab assignment that you'll start on Thursday. And then in lab, we're going to do blood pressure, heart rate, blood oxygen saturation, how saturated is your blood, your hemoglobin with oxygen, and cholesterol tests, where we're going to look for LDL, HDL, and triglyceride levels. Very easy, little prick, get a little bit. We use our little cholesterol assay kits, and we can quantify levels of cholesterol in all of you. And I highly recommend everybody do it, unless you really, really don't want to have to do the blood. Bless you, little blood draw. Yes, question.
Oh, you answered it. I was
Question.
like, that was the one where we prick.
Prick, little finger prick. We
Yeah.
never do phlebotomy in here. We always just do finger prick capillary tube. That's enough to do all the assays. We just need like a drop or two.
Yeah.
So we're gonna look for some of these, because these cholesterol levels are really, really important. They actually are indicators again for risk factors like atherosclerosis, like heart disease, hypertension, a lot of these other chronic illnesses that go up as you get older. LDL is low density lipoproteins, okay? So these are the fat cholesterol carriers that are loaded full of triglycerides and cholesterol. And you might be confused by this name, low density, but I'll give you a way to remember it. We have low density and we have high density, okay? Just think in terms of like in a swimming pool or in water. What is more dense, fat or muscle? Muscle, okay? If you got some chub, you float pretty well, right? So fat floats, yes? Okay. Lower density, fat floats, okay? So you've got more fat, you got more triglycerides, you got more cholesterol. Those are lower density. They're bigger, they're airier, they're floatier. That's not even a word, I don't think. But HDL, high density lipoproteins. High density in that they're more protein than they are fat, so they're denser. They're smaller, they're denser. They basically are empty, or very little fats and cholesterol within them. So they've sort of helped and gotten rid of some of the fat. They're not transporting around a ton of free cholesterol and triglycerides. By the way, what is a triglyceride made of? Triglyceride. No sugar. Why are you guys going with sugar? We are not in sugar. You all said it in unison right here too. No.
The carbon hydrogen thing?
Carbon hydrogen thing is getting
That's the
closer.
one
The thing is getting closer.
Makes the fats.
Okay, the fats. Triglyceride is a glycerol, the 3 carbon, right, with the oxygen, attached to 3 fatty acids. 3 fatty acids. 3 fatty acids. glycerol, glyceride, triglyceride. That forms the main type of fat that your adipose cells store within them. Okay? We took it apart. We looked at individual fatty acids because we were talking about fats in plants, oils, and fats in animals that are more like lard and thicker saturated fats. But in your body, when you actually store and hang on to those for energy reserves, they're triglycerides. They're in the format of glycerol with 3 fatty acids. Okay. Different than a phospholipid that has 2 fatty acids, okay, and is amphipathic. So, high density, higher density, they're more protein, they're more like empty. They're not carrying around as much fat, okay? So they come off as more dense. They're actually a higher density, and we can measure them. We can measure, our kit specifically measures total cholesterol. So what is this plus this? That's your total, okay? And then we can measure HDL just by itself. And then by default, we do a simple math equation. We take total minus HDL, and we figure out the LDL. Okay, so that's how in lab we're going to do it, as well as your triglyceride profile levels. We're going to detect those as well. Which one is good? Which one is bad? Good and bad. They're all with, woo, I just lost my thing. It's gone. Whatever, it's gone. Okay, which one's good and which one's bad?
HDL is good.
Okay, so HDL is good, okay, because it's pretty much, it's not transporting and delivering a whole bunch of triglycerides and cholesterol and stuff, right? Low density one then is the bad one, LDL, right? Because it's loaded with cholesterol and triglycerides and it's delivering them to all the cells and tissues of your body, okay? So if you've got, basically it's a ratio, it's like a proportion. If you've got more of the LDL floating around, that means you have more of the fat carriers transporting and carrying around more fat. Bless you. Which means that's not so good, right? So if you've got more of the LDL, you have a higher level of LDL and a lower level of HDL. That's giving us a measurement, like a snapshot, of how many of those fat carriers are full. Yes? Make sense? And transporting around in blood, in your circulation. Okay. So we can actually test for those in lab, and that's what we're going to do. Total HDL, and then we're going to subtract HDL from the total. It's going to give us LDL. And then we're going to measure the triglyceride levels as well, so we can see what those numbers are. There are various things that increase or decrease cholesterol levels. It's really not just total fat consumption or total cholesterol consumption in the diet that does impact it. It's associated with that. If you have a very high fatty diet, you consume a lot of animal fats, a lot of cholesterol, those types of things, you will have higher levels. But that's not the only thing that's linked with cholesterol levels. What else are linked with? What other factors do you guys think are linked with cholesterol levels? What did you say? Someone said? What? Running?
I said running.
Running, yes, physical activity. So physical activity or lack thereof, so levels of physical activity can actually impact cholesterol levels. Take a guess, what do you think it does?
Lowers it.
It lowers total cholesterol. Specifically though, which one does it really, it lowers one and it increases the other. Because a lot of these are in proportion. It's like a ratio. You're looking at how much of this versus how much of this, and then you get the total. If you exercise a whole lot, it increases your HDL levels and decreases your LDL levels. So it's dropping and releasing of the fat and not hanging on to and carrying that fat throughout the body. Okay, so we're going to look a little bit more at this, see if this will come back. I don't know why I'm having all these technical problems. The whole entire thing is completely frozen. Strange. Display settings, let's see. Hold on, give me a second. Let me see. Duplicate slideshow. Let's see if that fixes it.
Also,
There we go. Okay.
isn't genetics also part?
Yes. Yeah. So the other factors, so we just said physical activity. Okay, so that's one thing. And I'm gonna turn this a little bit so I can get that side of the board as well, because I'm gonna draw over here. All right. So, and actually they kind of look like this. These micelles that I do, because you've got, again, look in there, you've got these lipids. So you have these little kind of phospholipids, and then they're carrying around. Protein is in green, they're made of protein. They're packed with triglycerides in purple and cholesterol in blue. These are lipoproteins made of protein and lipid. And so we kind of say the good cholesterol is the HDL, okay? And we'll say in general, the bad is LDL. And you have an overall total that's those things together, added up together. That's the total cholesterol levels. So what can impact cholesterol levels, whether it's higher or lower, or more bad or more good? We've already said physical activity can impact. So exercise, physical activity.
Not eating egg yolks.
Diet, so certain things in your diet, we're going to get more into those later too. So diet, nutrition, what you actually consume. So if you have high fat, high salt diet, that's going to impact cholesterol and blood pressure. So those things are also linked with that as well. Okay, so diet, nutrition, what you actually consume. And then someone else said it over here. I think Christine, you said it.
Genetics.
Yes, ma'am, that is right. Genetics as well. So familial disposition and inheriting certain predispositioning factors or genes that will make your body make more cholesterol, more lipoproteins, and have more of the bad LDL and less of the good. So that can be a part of it. So especially if you have it in your family, you have hypertension, high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol levels, stress. I'm going to add that on here because this is another one we're going to talk about this in lab. A lot of people underscore, or they don't underscore, they don't emphasize enough the effects that stress has on your overall body, your overall physiology, your predisposition for different types of diseases and illnesses. Stress can have a big factor in a lot of how your body is able to handle homeostasis. That means blood pressure, and I will show you guys when we get to the end of the semester, we go over stress and the actual disease effects and the biological effects on the body. Just for short, suffice it to say for now, stress can lead to compromised immune system, chronic hypertension, high blood pressure, and cholesterol and fat lipid profiles that are out of whack. Okay? Just stress. Do you have any idea of what the hormone is that helps to mediate, or the hormones that help to mediate all those stress responses? Not dopamine. Dopamine is a feel-good pleasure, actually. It's in the feel-good, like, reward centers of the brain. Drug addiction, sex, orgasm, all that stuff's all dopamine. We'll go over that later.
Cortisol?
Cortisol, that's right, yes. Okay, cortisol. Cort, people call it cortisol. Also another one, norepinephrine, or norepi, or noradrenaline. You guys heard of adrenaline?
Yeah.
So another version of this, there's norepinephrine and there's epinephrine. AKA, same thing, these are adrenaline, that's all they are. The common lay term is adrenaline. That's that hyper, oh my God, fight or flight, that fight or flight response. You're nervous, you gotta get up and speak, you gotta run from a saber-toothed tiger. We don't have to do that anymore, but bad example. You know what I mean? It's that, oh God, your heart speeds up, your airways open up, your retina dilates, your brain's thinking fast, although sometimes you get a little fuzzy if you're really overwhelmed. But in general, it's that fight or flight response, allowing your body to mobilize energy and immediate yourself into action. For whatever action it is, whether it's nervousness, speaking, running, jumping, you hear a loud sound and you like duck and you freak out and your heart speeds up. It's all adrenaline. It's wired in to keep you alive and surviving and safe and healthy. But guess what? If you're in that mode, that adrenaline fight or flight stress mode for chronic periods of time, weeks, months, years, it actually ends up compromising your health and causing disease and associated with all kinds of different diseases. Yes, question, Jackie.
Does stress affect your sleep? Like you
Oh,
being
yes.
able to stay asleep?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Stress can lead to insomnia. It can be correlated and go hand in hand with depression, insomnia, psychoactive situations of the brain, lack of appetite, circadian rhythms that are out of whack. You're sleepy sometimes, you're awake, other times all over the place. It can totally be correlated with all that stuff. So we're going to go more into that later, but we're going to touch on it in lab. I'm going to have you guys do they're just little psychological based, like qualitative assessments of stress tests. So instead of the invasive stress testing where we hook you up to a heart monitor and an EKG and we have you do all kinds of different things, we're not going to really focus on the stress testing of the heart. We're going to do the psychological sort of stress testing. All of them are sort of related in different ways, and it's basically just a series of questions. There's one through a good psychology journal. You answer a series of questions. I'll have you guys open the app on your phone and you just take it and it'll give you your stress indicator or your number. your basic gauge of kind of where you're at. That's not to say if you have high stress, you're going to have high cholesterol, you're going to have high blood pressure, you're going to be sick, you're going to be insomniac. It's not to say all that. It's just to get a little check-in or an assessment of what kind of stress you feel like you're under. The funny thing is it's always changing, right? You can answer those questions and do these different tests. It's always changing. For me, in the middle of summer, I had like a 1 out of 140. I remember like a 2. And then mid-semester, I do it again. It's going to be way higher than that. It's going to be a way higher number. Yeah, Michael.
So adrenaline is bad or good for stress overall?
Okay, so it's good for your body, short term, because it allows you to mobilize into action, right?
Gotcha.
To do what you need to do, get energy quickly. It allows sugar metabolism, fat metabolism, all of your body to sort of react and deal with the stress. The problem is even cortisol does that. It helps to mobilize fats for free energy to use. And it helps to sort of get all your systems so you can go on that energy with little input, right? Even eating, your eating and your sleep cycles that get all disturbed. You can keep going. The problem is longer term exposure to those specific hormones and neurohormones actually deteriorate the immune system. So your white blood cells start to be inhibited and other parts of your body start to fall apart. So the answer, the long-winded answer, is short term, they're perfectly normal. They're good. They keep you surviving. They keep you aware of your surroundings and responding and behaving. And for me, they give me a sense of excitement and enthusiasm, right? If I didn't have that little like fight or flight burst, I'd be like, bah, 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 bah. I'd be like that. But I get excited about stuff. It's that same sort of, the energy, the excitement, it's wired into that whole fight or flight part of your nervous system. Those hormones in excess is where you have a problem. So balance is, again, is key. Balance is key. If you have this sustained level of operating or a lot of trauma or a lot of deadlines and a lot of personal, professional, all these things going on, it's going to start to deteriorate your system. I'll give you an example. You all know this. You've all been accustomed to this happening. You're going and going and going and going. You have papers, finals, seminar, blah, blah. And then you get to the end of that and you're like, oh my God, thank God. And then what happens?
Sick.
You get sick. Why'd you get sick? You just were exposed to cortisol and adrenaline for weeks straight. Your white blood cells were like, I can't even do it. They start getting attacked. They start getting inhibited. So then when you get exposed to a virus, the cold, influenza, whatever it is, you get sick. And you're like, why? Now I have an actual break and I can rest. And I'm like, it happens all the time. Turkey Day break, that's one of the ones that happens. Holiday breaks like Thanksgiving, December, and you travel and you're exposed to a lot of people. Your immune system is weakened. There you go. It's a perfect storm. Yes? Make sense? Okay, we totally sidetracked, but that's okay. That's interesting stuff. So it's good. Was there a question related to that? Okay, so immune function. And actually, if you've ever known anybody that's had a transplant, an organ transplant, like a kidney or a liver or lung or heart or any of those things, they will give the individual drugs, which are a steroid-based hormone drug, and it's basically cortisol. Cortisol, like prednisone or hydrocortisone, or any of those derivatives are basically cortisol. It's a steroid, and it inhibits the immune system. So that if I transplant an organ into somebody, their immune system doesn't attack that organ. That's how I quiet down the immune system. Okay? So we've capitalized on this medically and clinically. So that's how we know the effects of stress. Oh, they're very real in the body. People can die with extended periods of stress because they will start breaking down their body and their white blood cells and their immune system gets dysfunctional. We will actually give that as a medication to suppress the immune system because we know that's exactly how it works. Does that make sense? Okay, I know we're getting kind of away from the cholesterol and the high blood pressure, but the stress is linked into that. So we're going to do these simple stress tests in the lab at the end of lab on Thursday. Go ahead.
Do they do that the whole time? Like when you say you have a transplant? Like my grandma had a liver transplant.
For a while, for a very long time. And actually after the transplant, post-transplantation, many months to years later, they will have to take the prednisone or the cortisol derivative to just keep the immune system at bay and from attacking the non-self organ. And it can create a lot of other complications. They have a tendency of getting sick and getting exposed to different things and getting weakness and fatigue and all these other things, and it goes along with that.
Okay.
Yes, I gotta get off the stress stuff. We're going back on the stress later. Is it to do with stress? Let's wait, because I'm gonna talk about stress in lab as well. All right, so the good, bad cholesterol. LDL is the bad, HDL is the good. Here's HDL, here's LDL. People who consume a lot of cholesterol, okay, or fats, or they naturally make more LDL, they will have higher LDL levels. Okay, so there's some genetics, there's some predisposition that can be associated with that. Not always, by far and away. A lot of times we try to go quickly to genetics, and I'm like a geneticist and a developmental biologist, so I do the same thing. But a lot of times it's not genetics, it's environment in a lot of these cases. It is distinctly connected with physical activity, diet, nutrition, and stress. Like those things are really tightly linked in there. Not always, but for the most part, most of the time. So total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, triglyceride levels, that's what we're going to measure. Higher LDL, lower HDL, that's linked with something called atherosclerosis, and we talked about that last time. Remember, what is atherosclerosis?
Isn't it the buildup of plaque?
Yes,
in the arteries?
that's right, Alex. The buildup of plaque in the arteries. Hardening of the arteries, it's the building up of lipid, triglyceride, cholesterol, platelets, white blood cells, blah, 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 muscle, tissue, connective tissue. It packs into that area. Now we know it's more of an inflammatory response. Your body is trying to fix an area. And sometimes it happens with high blood pressure. The pressure exerted by the blood on the walls of the arteries and the capillaries gets nicked or torn or damaged. And then if you have high cholesterol levels, a lot circulating in your circulatory system, they dump the cholesterol and triglycerides at that site of damage or inflammation as part of that response. And then it packs up in there, and then you have an occluded artery or a blocked artery. And that can lead to stroke, lack of blood flow and oxygen and nutrients to a certain part of the brain, or heart attack, where the heart muscle itself isn't getting enough oxygen and nutrients. So another thing we did, all of these, exercise, so physical activity, diet, what you actually consume, and we didn't mention this right now, but we mentioned it in the last lecture discussion. Remember we were talking about fiber, soluble and insoluble fiber, how they are good at roughage and cleaning out the GI tract and pulling out some of the cholesterol and fats and toxins and things out with it. So if you get enough fiber, that will actually lower LDL levels, all by itself. Now combine that with increasing physical activity and having a well-balanced diet with enough fiber, and usually people with just diet modifications and exercise modifications can drop down LDL levels and increase HDL levels. It's that simple. Now if it's in your family and it's just high blood pressure and high cholesterol is all in your family, you have genetic associations or links with that. Then medications are warranted. Then they start medications. They go, okay, do diet, do fiber, eliminate this, eliminate that, start exercising. Still doesn't work. All right, we're going to put you on a medication that's actually going to lower, like Lipitor or one of those other ones. You've probably seen all the commercials. They help to bind it, take it out of the body, and lower the actual LDL levels in your body. Oops, did I skip? We're going to test cholesterol lab on Thursday, so it's a lot of fun. We'll all get to do it. I haven't done mine in a long time, so I don't even know. Mine's probably higher now than it was before.